Welcome to my closet. Happy New Year to you, 2024. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo, Emil Amok to you. This is my takeout, Emil Amok's takeout, my takes on all things considerable. And a lot is worth talking about today. I should have talked about this yesterday. I should have, but I was taking a hike. Claudine Gay was told to take a hike yesterday, or she resigned, but we know she was told to take a hike. But I was taking a hike, and I was told on the website of this place I was at. I was just up in Muir Woods to see the redwood trees, to see where the UN met and see all these old trees. And they said you're not going to get cell reception here. So we're right at the beginning of the walk, and I check my phone, and sure enough, I see a note from Claudine Gay saying personal news. And then a few minutes later, I see a note that says President Gay from the Harvard Corporation. And before it all, I see something from the New York Times saying breaking news, Claudine Gay has resigned. And I knew something was up. But still, I wasn't going to let it spoil my walk through the woods. So I walked through the woods thinking that maybe I would breathe in the air and help the trees by breathing out helping the trees breathe. It was beautiful. Saw banana slugs, saw mushrooms. I thought, oh, this is great. I come out, same old news. In fact, it's worse than I thought. I was talking to a friend of mine who covers this beat nationally, and I said, Claudine Gay probably has another 6 months. That's what I hope. Maybe they'll give her a year. But lo and behold, there was more news on Monday. Conservative advocates against DEI, against Claudine Gay, put out more information saying there was more plagiarism, saying there was more news about Claudine Gay. And this was it. Either she said, no, I can't take it anymore, or she got a little pressure. I read the emails on the personal news. It says, dear members of the Harvard community, it is with a heavy heart, but a deep love for Harvard that I write to share that I will be stepping down as president. Oh, I started shaking my head when I saw that. I knew it was no good, right? I knew that it wasn't going to be good news. This is not a decision I came to easily. Indeed, it has been difficult beyond words because I have looked forward to working with so many of you to advance the commitment to academic excellence that has propelled this great university across centuries. But after consultation, and this is the key paragraph, after consultation with members of the corporation, it has become clear that it is in the best interest of Harvard for me to resign so that our community can navigate this moment of extraordinary challenge with a focus on the institution rather than any individual. All in the first graph. When I read that, I knew that woman was pressured. She consulted with the corporation, that cabal, that group of Uber overseers. And then, of course, they sent out a note saying, with great sadness, we write in light of President Claudine Gay's message announcing her intention to step down from the presidency and resume her faculty position at Harvard. Who does that? Who steps down from president? And that's when I knew that this was not a good time, not a good time. Harvard had a choice. Harvard could have made a decision to say, after that lousy SCOTUS decision, that essentially ended affirmative action, Harvard could have taken a stand saying, we are committed to diversity. We are committed to DEI, as it's called. They could have done that. They chose not to. And it's the subject of my essay that's on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, right now. For Harvard, Claudine Gay was not the DEI hill to die on, but it should have been. It really should have been. And I'm telling you, I wrote this after thinking about it last night and hearing from people and really thinking about what is it that we're witnessing here. I've written about it on the ALDEF blog and on diversity issues in higher education over the last few weeks, when this first began after the hearing. And I always said, we are witnessing an attack on the perceived wokeness in universities. It's wrong, but we're seeing this attack, and sure enough, among those who led the charge against Claudine Gay, some people actually spoke of, we got a scalp, which is an odd, racist, anti-BIPOC way of putting what had happened to Claudine Gay. So I begin my essay saying, if you're a person of color, it's hard not to feel the pain of Claudine Gay. I mean, for many people, I don't know, many people grow up saying, I want to be president of Harvard. But I guess it's akin to saying, one day I want to be the president of the United States. To say, I want to be the leader of this thing, this institution. It's a dream. So if you're a person of color, it's hard not to feel the pain of a Claudine Gay. And as an Asian American alumnus of Harvard, it hurts even more. Because as I've written, I was there in October, right when, the situation began. The first weekend of October, when they were starting to dox the people who were, part of the student groups that were fighting those who were fighting, Gay. And I'm just telling you, at the time, people were stunned then, and no one expected that it would lead to Gay's resignation, but it has. Being a BIPOC person with a Harvard degree has always made you a target. The racist assumptions never fade. Why are you here? Because of your race, your gender? Surely it's not your talent or qualifications. And if you're a first in your position among whites, as Gay was Harvard's first African-American president and only the second female, well, you might already feel like an imposter, right? You muster up a sense of resilience only to be constantly beaten up by political bullies who question your very existence. That's the real shame about the saga of the fallen ex-Harvard president. Consider that the most damning comments during the Gay saga came from rabid fans of the twice impeached, four-time criminally indicted man who wants to be president again. That would be of the United States. That would be one Donald Trump. One of the League of Trump lawyers, Alan Dershowitz, a former Harvard law professor, now emeritus, was one of those on cable TV leading the chorus calling Gay a DEI hire. For the uninitiated, of course, DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion, the established catch-all phrase for race matters in the academic and corporate worlds. It is the new focus of the second coming of the affirmative action battle, which despite the SCOTUS ruling last year, isn't quite dead enough for some. But then the anti-civil rights folks never give up trying to straighten the bending arc of justice. Can you imagine? We're trying to bend the arc of justice, and there are those trying to unbend it as we're trying to bend it. It's the battle that we're in. And so right-wing opponents of DEI saw Gay, beginning with her less than fiery congressional hearing comments, as a gift to their cause. Gay was a pushover for attack dogs like Dershowitz, who demonized her, not for milquetoast depends on the context comments, but for what she stood for, DEI. Said Dershowitz, that's how she became president. He said that one night on cable TV. She is the symbol of DEI, and the symbol has failed, he said. And what are the moral failings of Trump? The man DEI attackers love. They bash gay and embrace Trump, the man who is so unqualified to lead the United States as president, who never held public office, who lied or misled in his public statements thousands of times, that made presidential fact-checking a cottage industry. Now Trump's under indictment on 90-plus felony counts and the prohibitive favorite to be the Republican nominee for president. How does that happen? That can only be understood as Trump being the extreme beneficiary of white affirmative action. And what of the thousands of lies Trump has made? His defenders will say, at least it's not plagiarism, which is, after all, a common practice among politicians and corporate execs who have ghostwriters and speechwriters saying others' words and passing them off as your own. Well, in the real world of politics, that's standard operating procedure. Trump elevated that. He didn't even bother to read his scripts after a while. He just went rogue and told bald-faced lies. Meanwhile, the plagiarism that Gay was accused of was determined by Harvard to be minor and not a violation of research misconduct. She was not an outright liar like Trump. She was allowed to make some minor corrections. Still, her right-wing critics made it the moral cause for her demise. They allow for the lies of the Republican frontrunner, and Gay is president no more. There's your damning double standard. Sometimes a simple math concept like substitution is instructive in these matters. If Claudine Gay were a white man, would she have been made a target? I mean, if Donald Trump or any other white man had answered the same way as Gay at that fake congressional hearing, that was really all about getting campaign video rather than finding the truth, would the white man have been pilloried? Of the three university presidents who were called to testify before Congress, all three were women. McGill of Penn resigned, but Kornbluth of MIT has hung on with MIT's support. Gay, however, was more vulnerable. Not just a woman, but a black woman. And that led to increased scrutiny of her work and scholarship, essentially Oppo research, to fuel even more attacks on Gay's qualifications. That's what you do to a BIPOC person. You doubt them to death. Remember Trump and the birther thing with Obama? Critics didn't even attack the two white female college presidents on their previous scholarship, and they wouldn't have attacked a white man on credentials, not even if they didn't have any. Witness Trump. They gave whites a pass, dumped on Gay. She was the perfect Harvard president for the anti-DEI crowd. And instead of supporting her, Harvard buckled. It's a bad precedent for DEI's future. Harvard buckled? Then certainly XXX State University can feel free to dump DEI anytime in the near future. Some have already dumped DEI. And that's a sad thing. Harvard, as a private institution with a large $60 billion endowment, should have set an example for higher ed and stood by its president. Harvard could have refused her letter of resignation on Monday, which came even as more allegations of plagiarism were surfacing. The number was rising, according to reports, to about near 50 examples, many of them minor, but they were turned in by an anonymous source to conservative media. Apparently, it was too much for Gay to stand her ground and fight on. But Harvard, the institution, could have, and it didn't. Gay clearly was not perfect enough for Harvard, and the school caved to the pressure or just didn't like all the negative publicity. And Gay Harvard had a qualified African American academic leader who was the right person to lead the school's transformation as it tries to undo its racist past, where slaveholders and colonizers have names on buildings and or are honored as heroes. It should have stuck with Gay. Harvard should have stuck with Gay beyond a mere 6 months. But real world politics trumped the norm of even the most treacherous academic office politics. I read you a part of where Gay wrote in her letter to alums, after consultation with members of the corporation, it has become clear that it is in the best interests of Harvard for me to resign so that our community can navigate the moment of extraordinary challenge with a focus on the institution rather than any individual. After consultation, that's one way to soften a shove out the door. The anti-DEI charges hurled by billionaire right-wing alum donors like Bill Ackman and Trump supporters that bullied Gay personally and individually were enough to topple Harvard. And that corporation, the Harvard Corporation, made up of more former or current hedge fund runners and more corporatists than is good for a higher ed institution, simply let Gay resign. There doesn't appear to have been any resistance or fight. What does that say about Harvard's dedication to diversity, equity, and inclusion? For the right people, maybe. The sense we're left with is Gay was not to be Harvard's DEI hill to die on. And it should have been. Not wide enough, not corporate enough. Harvard's own letter to the community began, quote, with great sadness, and was more PR than real. As an alumnus, I got both emails within minutes. And as a person of color, I immediately felt what Gay must have felt. Where was the support? Who had Gay's back? Not the university. The entire situation says a lot about Harvard's commitment to DEI. They'll back you. Just don't hurt the brand. Harvard wouldn't fight the bullying of Claudine Gay and then chose not to do the right thing. It took the easy way out, protected the institution, and let Gay slip into the darkness. And that's my column I wrote in the Aldef blog. For Claudine Gay, for Harvard, Claudine Gay was not the DEI hill to die on, but it should have been. It should have been. There probably was no more perfect time than after the first batch of early admits were announced to Harvard. It was back early in December. And you knew it was different. You knew it was different because for the first time they did not mention race. They did not mention ethnicity of the people, who were early admits. We were totally in the dark, which is exactly what colorblind admissions want. They want us to be totally in the dark. So we don't know. And at first you say, well, it sounds right. That's the way it should be, just people on merit. But if you can't count race, if you can't talk about race, you can't count race. How do you know if you're doing something effective, like admitting people equitably into a system? So Harvard, with Gay as president, was in a perfect position to say, the Supreme Court was wrong when they ruled against affirmative action. The Supreme Court was dead wrong. And we stay further committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we have the first African-American president. And we have this great university. We're going to undo the past where slaveholders' names are on buildings. And we're people who have did questionable things and exploited people in the past. We're going to dishonor them. That's not being woke. That's that arc of justice again. Harvard was in perfect position to do all that and fight for Claudine Gay. And it chose not to. And that That hurts me. As someone who has seen the evolution from the very first day I stepped foot in Harvard Yard, 1973, to just last October when I was there and noticed, hey, they still have that banh mi truck selling Vietnamese sandwiches. And look, everyone at Harvard looks Asian, about 30%. I mean, this is a great thing. And Harvard finally has an Asian American Studies program after decades of not having one officially. They even have a Tagalog class for the first time. And now Claudine Gay was president. It was great that she was going to lead the way toward a new 21st century Harvard. They had the opportunity to elevate her, but they let her detractors win. And that does not make this alum, this BIPOC alum of Harvard, feel good at all. I will say this. I was there in October to attend a Harvard Asian American Alumni Association event. And I will say that their people were very concerned that they didn't know what to think. They saw Claudine Gay's first statements that were not really, she didn't come out strongly at first, soon after the October 7th attacks, soon after any of the protests. And she was criticized for that. And there was some uneasiness about what would happen. No one knew. And the person who came to speak to the Alumni Association of Asian Americans, there are about 300 or so assembled. They meet every 4 years. Alan Gerber, the provost, who happened to be in my class. And I heard him speak. He greeted the alums there, made us feel comfortable, made us know that Harvard had our backs. I went up to him afterwards, said hello, and it's like 45 years never passed. It's like he greeted me personally. And it made me feel like I belonged and that I was a part of that. So if there's some kind of saving grace, he's the interim. And having seen him speak at the Asian American Alumni event, I think in the interim, Harvard's in good hands. I still feel that they blew it. They had a chance to stand up for diversity, equity, and inclusion by standing up for Claudine Gay. And they didn't do it. All right, so that's my column. It's on the Aldef blog with some annotations that you'll only get here listening to the Secret Podcast. I'm going to end it here now. Like I said, it just caught me by surprise. I was talking to some people who cover higher ed, national level. I said, I think maybe she has 6 months more. I thought she might last a year. It would depend upon the corporation and how the corporation backed her. And the New York Times did some excellent stories about the corporation and revealing who the corporation members were. I mean, it's not the overseers. I mean, every alumni gets alumnus gets an envelope to vote for overseers. Turns out the overseers are kind of like this. They're a group of concerned alums, but they're not this uber group. The corporation. It's strange, right? And that line in Gay's note saying saying after consultation with the corporation, it has become clear that it is in the best interests of Harvard to focus on the institution rather than on any individual. The institution, there's since the 17th century, right? Going strong, but a little weaker today after the misstep on Claudine Gay. Now, mind you, the misstep was not that they hired Claudine Gay. The misstep was how they failed to back her up, failed to support her, failed to say, you're our choice, Claudine Gay. We know you can do it. And in some ways, it doesn't surprise me, because I remember when I was there in the 70s, when the first years after a sense of affirmative action was beginning to take place, there wasn't any real support. You were there. What happened, happened. You made do, and you make your way. But it's different now, I see. I mean, from the kind of support, they've learned in 40, 50 years that there's a way to do it. Now, they just haven't learned at the executive presidential level that this is what you do. This is how you should stand up and support someone you've named the first African-American president, the second female, second woman president. I'm disappointed, but I don't have the residuals of a hedge fund to say, no, I'm going to suspend my $25 to Harvard this year. No, they don't care. But I have a voice. I'm telling you my story and my reaction. And I hope that it helps you understand how some people are feeling about the fall of Claudine Gay. All right, we're here Monday through Friday. I guess now we have no excuse. There's no New Year holiday. Usually 2 p.m. Pacific, live. Come on, talk about the news, talk about things. I guess most of the news is still focused on Iowa, focused on what's going on there. It's important. Although I still feel like, God, isn't it funny? Iowa is like one of the whitest states in the nation. It's still used as a barometer for who should be president. I mean, I've always said that. And that was why, well, Joe Biden wanted South Carolina to be first because, well, he knows in South Carolina, the black vote is usually pro-Biden and saved him last go round. So we'll continue to follow the news and see what else is going on. Big story in the New York Times today on Asian Americans whose careers are stymied because of the race, because they are perceived as being potentially disloyal, potentially as national security risk. You thought that maybe we had gotten beyond that. And I try to be optimistic, right? I try to see things like, oh, this Shohei Ohtani thing coming to baseball, coming to America. This is a big deal. It means there's an Asian consciousness at play. And maybe when you have an Asian in America's pastime, yeah, we'll be one happy family. That's always the hope. You always try to be optimistic. But then you see the reality. And the reality is, in 2024, China is both enemy and adversary, and I guess a third, capitalist partner. And anyone who looks Asian is still suspicious. It's the perpetual foreigner stereotype 2024. I suppose we can expect to see more of it in the coming year. I hope not. Okay, that ends it for today. Hey, check us out. Monday through Friday, we talk about the news from an Asian American perspective. We call this subtitle it WDAAAT. What does an Asian American think? What does an Asian American? And they never ask. That's why you got to say it. The micro talk show here, the AAPI and the AAXs, and you can see it if you're seeing it now. The Secret Podcast on YouTube at Emil Amok 1, Facebook, FB.com at EmilGuillermo.media. Also on Twitter at Emil Amok. We like to close the show with a little meditation. You know, because I'm Amok because it's a form of anger, right? It's to be thrust into a murderous frenzy. I mean, that's the official definition, but only metaphorically. Only metaphorically. And even witnessing what happened with Gay yesterday. And, you know, it's not just blacks. It's all people of color who, you know, come into contact or are involved at Harvard. You'll always get what are you doing here? Or we know why you're here. I mean, it's stereotypical, but it's true. And now we've seen it play out at the highest level, which means if you think that we're in a post-racial world because we've ended affirmative action, well, we're not in a post-racial world. We're not. Sort of like Obama, right? Thinking that, well, we were in a post. No, we're not in a post-racial world. So I find that in times like this, meditation has helped me. Meditation has calmed me down. Meditation has made me accept what's going on. Not accept, but understand what's going on. And then so I can address it, move on, not let the past get in the way, move forward. Meditation. And I mentioned earlier in my essay a thing about, you know, imposter, right? The imposter syndrome wasn't invented until after my class graduated. But the idea is it was there. They're trying to understand, well, what does this mean? This idea that you don't belong, that you're faking it, that you're not. And the antidote to that has always been a sense of loving kindness, self-love for self-worth. It begins here, send it out to others. It comes back twofold, threefold, fourfold, manifold. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. We're live. Happy New Year to you all, this first program of 2024. It didn't exactly start off in the best possible way, but let's make it so. Emil Guillermo. Till next time. Mahal Gita.